A question for Glenn and John. Do you think that racism within the Black community, Lance, who is posing this question. Do you think that racism within the Black community towards other racial groups, Latino, Asian, white people, is downplayed or ignored in the media and justified within the Black community itself? If yes, why do you think that that's the case? So let me venture a response here. I think it is the case, frankly. I mean, I think there are people who argue Blacks can't be racist because racism is privilege and power together with, anti-Black or racial antipathy. It's prejudice plus power. Black people don't have power and therefore they can't be racist. I think that's nonsense. I think that's a playing with words. It's an Orwellian dishonesty of the use of language. Racism is racism. It means antipathy toward people of another race because of their race. It hasn't got anything to do with whether or not you can act on it. I mean, you can add the additional consideration of the implications of a racist attitude for social function, but the idea that a person is not racist if they have antipathy toward people of another race because they belong to a group that is on the whole powerful is in my view, a kind of playing with words. Is it justified within the Black community? Absolutely. Anti-white antipathy within the Black community, of course it's justified. In my experience, in many instances, I have been party to conversations in which people have said racist remarks about Karens and Beckys and good old boys and preppies and so forth, based on caricature and stereotype of white people, and have felt completely justified in doing so within these internal conversations amongst Blacks. They may well have been deferential to public sensibility in a mixed audience, but the idea that you can talk in certain ways about white people amongst Black people and be justified in doing so is entirely consistent with my experience. Why? Why is there anti-Asian racism? Well, why are some of the attacks by people on the streets of New York City in which elderly Asian,
a disproportionate number of attacks,
people disproportionately coming amongst people of color? I'm sure something like that is also true in San Francisco, although I don't have the numbers in front of me.
It seems to be, yeah.
What we could speculate here. Jealousy and envy of the success of these people within the American society would be one reason why. 50 years ago, in this many of the urban areas, it was anti-Semitism. Jews were there cheek by jowl. They were still, many of them, working class. There were shopkeepers and salesmen and engaging in various kinds of enterprise with communities of color. And there was a lot of anti-Semitism that was just based on that. When Al Sharpton incited a riot on 125th Street against a shopkeeper, and led to an arsonist attack in which people died in part because of the incitement of Al Sharpton. What was that about? In Crown Heights, this is going back 25, 30 years, I grant you that, but nevertheless, what was some of that antipathy toward the Hasidic Jews of Brooklyn about, coming from Black people? Of course there was Black anti-Semitism being manifested there, et cetera. I think we ought not to give a pass to racists, whatever their color. I think we ought to renounce racism. I think, what is his name? Darrell Brooks, allegedly the murderer of 6 people in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Waukesha. Yeah.
When he ran into that, I think they say Waukesha. I think the emphasis is on the first syllable. I think they say Waukesha. Right. When he ran into that Christmas parade and murdered a bunch of people. And it turned out on his Twitter, Facebook, social media communications, he had made various representations that suggested an anti-Black, I should say an anti-white racist sensibility. To avoid the obvious implication that there is a simmering hatred of white people that is stoked by some of the rhetoric of organizations like Black Lives Matter. and then reflected in the murderous behavior of some Black people who go and kill white people because of the color of their skin. To avoid that is to put one's head in the sand. And I say this not with any pleasure. I say this because I am quite sure that there are a great many observers who are white who are not fooled by the media's assiduous effort to avoid mentioning Darrell Brooks' race, and who think about that incident in exactly these terms. Murderous, racist Black man drives a car into a white parade. You should go to Waukesha, Wisconsin. I've been there. You can hardly find a whiter town. It's the county seat of the most Republican county in the state of Wisconsin. It looks like it came out of Americana picture book of, what you think
Ozzie and Harriet.
A Midwest Ozzie and Harriet town would look like. That's what it looks like. And they were having a Christmas parade, and a Black felon out on $1,000 bail for another assault charge runs over a lily white parade group. And he's got the kind of social history that he has. All you have to do is reverse the colors and imagine what the discussion of the country would be about that. Why are we not talking about anti-white racism amongst murderous Black people as a problem in this country? It is a problem. It's a real problem. It deserves to be talked about. There's nothing wrong with talking about it, et cetera. That's what I would say.
Everything that you've said is what I would say, and I would underline the Waukesha incident in that. Notice the all but complete silence after a few days in the media about that. What a horrific thing. People dead and maimed. And clearly, because it was a Black man, it just simply isn't discussed. It would be discussed if it was Muslims. We'd still be talking about it now. But when it turns out that it's somebody named Darrell Brooks, and with that social media history and that history, then it just isn't talked about at all. And it's clear that what the media thinks is that white racism, Black racism is okay, and that it should not be condemned, that there's no use in discussing it, because the discussion would be too messy, i.e. it would not confirm the endless truism that racism exists. And you can't help feeling as if there's a sense that Black people shouldn't be held accountable. And of course, he's going to be held accountable by the formal legal system, but we're not supposed to have a conversation about him. And it's a little bit chilling that, nothing, suddenly nothing. Whereas if he were white, we would talk about it for an entire year. Yeah. Well, it's almost frightening in a way.
Where is the press? I mean, I want to know how he grew up. I want to know his cousin. I want to know who his running buddies were. I want to know what books he was reading when he was in school. I want to know what church he went to, if he went to any church. I mean, in other words, I want to know the root of it. I want to know the whole context out of which he emerged. It's accessible. All you have to do is devote reporting resources to investigating the background, the affiliates, the family, the connections and whatnot of Darrell Brooks. This is doable. But people, it would appear, who have the megaphones in this country don't want to look at that reality. And that's a pity, in my opinion. It's a disservice to the country. We'll move on to another question.